Welcome, everyone, to another fascinating deep dive here on the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey that's, well, not just about talking. It's about really connecting, influencing, and, ultimately thriving.
Exactly. We're diving into the profound science, but also the practical art of effective conversation itself.
And this isn't just for, say, public speakers or those amazing salespeople you meet.
No, not at all.
This is universally important. It's for absolutely everyone in every single part of life, from our personal relationships, the really close ones,
Mhm.
to making big moves in your career.
Right.
And mastering these skills, as we're going to explore today, can genuinely unlock new opportunities. It can help resolve those old conflicts that just linger.
Yeah, the ones that never seem to go away.
Exactly. And it can dramatically improve your overall well-being. It's huge.
And the why now for this, I think, is more critical than ever. I mean, look around. We're hyper-connected, right? Instant messages, social media, constant digital chatter.
Everywhere. All the time.
But despite all that, so many people are still feeling, well, awkward, misunderstood, or frankly, just not heard.
It's a real paradox, isn't it? More ways to talk, but less real connection.
It really is. We're seeing this pervasive loneliness epidemic, even affecting young adults, which just highlights this disconnect between, connectivity and actual connection.
So what's our mission today? What are we hoping listeners take away?
Our mission in this deep dive is really to break down the secrets of people who are truly effective communicators. We're going to offer actionable strategies, some surprising insights too, all pulled from extensive research and, yeah, even some personal experiences.
Good. The real world stuff.
Definitely. We want to take you on a journey from maybe feeling like a passive participant in conversations,
Just kind of letting things happen around you.
right, to becoming a confident, impactful conversationalist. We'll cover everything from the subtle things like really listening all the way to navigating those really difficult, challenging discussions.
Okay, so let's start right at the foundation. What is it that makes certain individuals so impactful when they communicate? You know the type, right? They
They-
walk into a room, and it's almost like they effortlessly draw people to them.
Mhm. Magnetic, almost.
Yeah. They make friends easily, seem to achieve their goals with this kind of grace, and people just trust them almost instantly.
It's easy to look at them and think, wow, they've got some kind of magic, or it's just an innate gift they were born with.
Right, like they just won the social lottery.
Exactly. But what we're here to explore today is that it really isn't magic. It's not some fixed trait. It's actually a set of learnable strategies.
Okay, so it's something you can actually practice and get better at.
Absolutely. And in this deep dive, we're going to reveal exactly what those individuals do, the specific techniques, so you can actually start adopting those strategies yourself.
Fantastic. Let's get practical then. What are the tangible benefits? Where does this really make a difference?
Oh, the benefits are huge, and they really stretch across your whole life. Let's break down where these skills can truly transform things. First up, and this is a big one for many people, enhanced career prospects.
Okay.
Think about the whole career journey, right? From landing that initial job interview,
The nerve-wracking part.
totally, to succeeding in your day-to-day tasks, building that crucial rapport with colleagues, which is so important.
Yeah, getting things done relies on that.
Absolutely. And then ultimately, climbing that corporate ladder.
Yeah.
Every single stage, outstanding social skills aren't just like a nice to have, they are absolutely crucial.
So not just soft skills, but essential skills.
Essential. If you can't talk effectively with your colleagues, collaboration on projects, it becomes nearly impossible.
Right.
If you can't communicate problems clearly to your boss, you risk getting labeled, a poor communicator, maybe someone who isn't proactive.
Which can really hold you back.
Hugely. The ability to hold effective conversations with pretty much anyone and everyone is really a prerequisite for landing that dream job and advancing in your career. It's not just what you know.
It's how you share it, how you connect.
Precisely. It's how you connect what you know with other people effectively.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And I imagine that extends beyond just your individual career path, right, into the wider world of business.
Oh, definitely. It directly impacts having better business relationships. Think about it. Conversation is the bedrock, the fundamental pillar for forging profitable, mutually beneficial deals and alliances.
So partnerships, collaboration.
All of it. If you've ever been to, say, a conference and you've spoken to someone who, okay, maybe they're an absolute expert in their field, incredibly knowledgeable, but they were just incredibly dull to talk to.
Oh, yeah, we've all met that person.
Yeah.
You're checking your watch.
Exactly. You know firsthand how poor communication can be a massive barrier. You could have the most brilliant mind, but if you bore everyone you meet, those potentially lucrative partnerships, those great deals, they're just not going to happen.
The connection just isn't there.
It's not there. And moving beyond the professional world, these skills also profoundly impact your family relationships.
Okay, this is interesting because the media often paints family life as, naturally easy, almost effortless.
Yeah, like a sitcom where everything resolves in 22 minutes.
Right. But the reality,
The reality is, most truly loving, functional family relationships require consistent work. It's about mastering things like conflict resolution, learning how to share your views without, irritating your loved ones.
which can be tricky.
Very tricky. And crucially, understanding when it's best to just bite your tongue.
Oof, that's a tough one.
It's a really difficult skill, but it's vital for building respectful, loving, and lasting family relationships.
So it's not about avoiding issues, but handling them skillfully.
Handling them with respect and understanding. And then, of course, there are better romantic relationships.
Yeah.
This is often a personal journey for people, realizing that the secret to great conversation, especially in romance, isn't actually about being incredibly witty yourself or fascinating or the life of the party.
It's not about performance.
No, it's fundamentally about focusing on the other person, truly listening, showing genuine interest. That shift in perspective can lead to fewer fights, much more genuine connection, and just, happier times together.
Whether the relationship is just starting out or it's a long-term thing.
Exactly. Whether it's casual or deeply serious, that focus on the other person is key.
So it really sounds like the core principle is shifting the focus outward onto the other person rather than inward onto yourself.
That's a perfect summary.
What's the ultimate payoff then for you, for the individual mastering these skills?
Well, all of this success at work, better family bonds, happier romantic connections, it all culminates in significantly improved self-esteem.
Okay. The internal benefit.
Absolutely. When you start experiencing success in these key areas of your life, the natural, almost inevitable outcome is a significant boost in how you feel about yourself.
That makes sense.
Think about it. There's little in life more frustrating than feeling like you're not living up to your potential, right? Or constantly having those thoughts, what if?
If only I'd said.
Exactly. What if I had just said the right thing at that moment? Would my life have taken a different, better turn? When you master these conversational skills, you'll find yourself less plagued by those what ifs.
You feel more in control.
More in control, more confident, and the strong friendships and business relationships you build, they inherently reinforce your self-worth. As social beings, we thrive when we're surrounded by people who make us feel accepted and content.
Right.
And that positive feedback loop, in turn, actually helps you further refine your social skills. It builds on itself.
So it's not just about getting ahead in the external world. It's about meeting a deep psychological need for connection, which then actively reshapes how we see ourselves internally. Our sense of worth.
That's the real superpower, I think. It's unlocking you, your potential, your confidence.
That's a really powerful feedback loop you've described.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and tackle some common misconceptions. Things that often hold people back from even trying to improve their communication. One I hear a lot is the myth of the socially awkward genius.
Ah, yes, the classic trope.
You see it in TV shows, movies. The incredibly smart person who's just terrible with people. It's almost portrayed as an expected trade-off.
Right, like high intelligence naturally comes with social awkwardness, and it supposedly doesn't matter because, hey, they're brilliant in other ways.
But you're saying that's a myth.
It's a dangerous myth, really, for a couple of key reasons. Firstly, there is simply no proven link between having a high IQ and having poor social functioning.
Okay.
In fact, if you look at historical examples, people like Albert Einstein, widely considered one of the most brilliant minds ever, were known to be quite charming and socially successful. They completely defied that stereotype.
So the evidence doesn't actually support it.
Not really. And secondly, and maybe this is even more important, even if there were some negative correlation, the vast majority of us are not certified geniuses.
Good point.
So this kind of consolation prize for being socially ineffective, it's largely irrelevant for most people listening right now. It doesn't really apply.
It's interesting how deeply rooted that myth is, though.
Yeah.
It feels like we almost want to believe that brilliance excuses social ineptitude sometimes.
I think it provides a comfort zone, perhaps. If
Yeah.
you believe social skill is fixed or linked to something else you can't control, like genius-level intellect, then maybe you feel you don't have to put in the effort to improve.
Which leads perfectly into the next myth, doesn't it?
It does. The myth of fixed social skills.
Hmm.
This is the idea that charisma, social ability, charm. It's all innate. You either have it or you don't, and it's unchangeable.
Yeah, people look at someone who's naturally popular and think, oh, they were just blessed, or they have the gift of gab.
And that's just as untrue as the awkward genius myth. The reality is, most people can significantly improve their social skills, provided they have the right tools and, importantly, the willingness to practice.
Okay, so where's the proof for that? How do we know improvement is possible?
Well, for really powerful evidence, consider the interventions developed for individuals with Asperger's syndrome, or AS.
Or?
People with this diagnosis have a form of autism that specifically impairs their ability to communicate meaningfully. They often talk excessively about their own interests, struggle with eye contact, might speak in a monotone, and find it genuinely difficult to take an interest in what others are thinking or feeling.
That sounds incredibly isolating for them.
It can be, leading to profound loneliness and alienation. But here's the crucial part, the good news. People with AS can be taught how to behave more effectively in social situations.
Really?
Through structured approaches like role-playing and targeted training led by skilled therapists. They learn specific social behaviors, things like how to maintain eye contact appropriately, how to vary their tone of voice to convey emotion, how to show interest in others. They literally learn strategies to blend in and function effectively in most social settings.
Wow, so even with those significant inherent challenges, they can learn and adapt.
Exactly. The clear moral of that story is undeniable. Even in cases where there are severe social deficiencies, determination combined with the right guidance allows for significant learning and improvement.
That's incredibly hopeful.
It really is. So if that level of growth is possible for them, just imagine the potential for someone who maybe just feels a little rusty or a bit out of practice or lacks confidence.
Right. The potential for the average person is huge.
Huge. So regardless of any past social mishaps or maybe feeling ineffective in conversations right now, you absolutely have the choice to change. You can start today.
It's not set in stone.
Not at all. Think of it as a journey of self-discovery. Just like anyone who's become good at something, they probably learned through maybe reading books, watching videos, going to seminars, and, yeah, making plenty of mistakes along the way. You, too, can forge your own path to becoming a truly effective communicator.
Okay, so we've established that improvement is possible, that it's a skill. Now, let's move to what might be one of the most surprising, maybe even counterintuitive truths in effective conversation. Most of us are, well, frankly, pretty terrible listeners.
It's true, isn't it? We often play this subconscious game,
Good game.
the when do I next get to speak game.
Ah, yes. Waiting for our turn.
Exactly. Instead of genuinely trying to understand the other person, we're just formulating our response, waiting for a gap to jump in.
And the stats back this up, don't they? We spend something like 60% of our communication time listening.
Roughly, yes. A huge chunk of our interaction time.
Yet, how often do we truly pay attention? We're often just waiting for our turn in the spotlight.
It's a very common trap. But the good news, again, is that you absolutely can retrain your brain to tune in properly and pay attention.
How? What's a practical way to do that?
Okay, here's an effective exercise you can try. It's sometimes called the channels. Just close your eyes for a moment, wherever you happen to be listening right now.
Okay.
And try to identify how many distinct streams of sound you can hear. Give them labels in your head. Maybe people talking nearby, rain on the windows, traffic outside, the hum of your computer.
So actively isolating different sounds.
Exactly. This simple act helps strengthen your ability to focus, to consciously direct your attention, which is exactly what you need to do to stay focused on what someone else is saying. If you practice this for just a few minutes each day, you'll likely notice a significant improvement in your overall concentration fairly quickly.
That's a neat little exercise. Beyond just tuning in, though, you mentioned understanding different listening positions. What does that mean?
Right. It's about moving beyond just superficial listening, just hearing the words, to achieving genuine understanding. We need different approaches for different goals.
Okay.
So focused listening is excellent for fact-finding. That's when you really need to extract specific information accurately.
Like in a work meeting or getting instructions?
Precisely. But then there's what we might call expansive empathic listening. This is vital for emotional connection. It involves patiently following someone's train of thought, crucially, without judgment, allowing them the space to express themselves fully.
So less about the facts, more about the feeling.
Exactly. It's about moving from simply hearing the words to trying to genuinely feel the other person's world, their perspective. That shift alone, that's where the magic of real connection begins. Not just in business deals, but in every intimate conversation, every important relationship.
That's a great distinction. It really is about tailoring your listening style to the situation and the goal. So within that, what's the difference between active and passive listening in practice? And when is each one actually appropriate?
Good question. So active listening is a conscious, effortful process. You're genuinely trying to understand what the other person is saying, and you react in ways that encourage them, maybe by summarizing what they said, asking clarifying questions, nodding, giving verbal cues.
So you're showing you're engaged.
Exactly. It's almost always preferable for building rapport and ensuring understanding. Passive listening, on the other hand, requires very little effort. You might take in some information, but you're not really bothered by gaps or misunderstandings. You're just kind of letting the sound wash over you.
Like listening to background music almost.
Sort of. Now, popular wisdom often says active listening is always best, but I think sometimes passive listening is all that's needed, or even appropriate.
Really? When?
Well, for instance, maybe you're letting your spouse just ramble happily about their day. They're not looking for solutions, just connection.
Yeah.
Your passive listening, just being present and enjoying their happiness, might be perfect.
Okay, so it's not always about intense focus.
No. The crucial check, though, is this. If someone feels unheard or misunderstood, you need to assess your listening position. Were you truly interested in their feelings, their perspective? Or were you maybe just listening for intriguing facts or gossip or waiting for your turn? That self-assessment is key.
Right, checking your own intention.
And another really powerful mindset shift is viewing every conversation as a learning opportunity.
How so?
Assume that every single person you talk to is a potential teacher. You can even make a little game out of it in your head. Okay, what might I learn from this person?
Even in casual chats.
Especially in casual chats. After a conversation, take just a moment to reflect. How might they have challenged your worldview, even in a tiny way? Not every conversation needs to be this profound, life-altering event, but almost anyone can teach you something new, offer a different perspective, even if it's just a small insight into their world or a topic you knew little about.
That's a really positive and open way to approach interactions.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off needing to be interesting yourself.
Exactly. It shifts the focus.
But what about those times when, despite your best intentions, your brain just seems to shut down? You stop absorbing information. How do you know when to, disengage from a conversation respectfully?
That's a very real phenomenon, and your brain is actually giving you a signal.
Yeah.
Our brains are incredibly smart, right? They've evolved to maximize our resources, including our limited concentration spans.
Okay.
So if you find a particular individual really hard to listen to for extended periods, it's quite possible they become repetitive.
The broken record effect.
Exactly. We all do it, sometimes tell the same stories, complain about the same hot-button issues again and again. After a while, conversations with these individuals can start to feel, well, pointless, like you're just going through the motions. And importantly, it's often not you being a bad listener in that moment. It's them providing repetitive, unengaging stimuli.
Okay, so my brain zoning out might actually be a valid signal.
It often is. So what are your practical choices when dealing with these repetitive speakers?
Yeah, what can you do without being rude?
Well, one option, especially if maintaining good terms is crucial, say, it's your spouse telling that same work story for the 10th time, but they enjoy telling it, is simply to take a passive approach. Let them ramble, nod along, maybe offer minimal engagement.
Okay, the path of least resistance sometimes.
Sometimes. Another option is to try and actively draw them onto a different topic, steer the conversation elsewhere. We'll touch on techniques for that later in our deep dive.
Okay.
But often, the simplest and most effective solution is simply to bring the conversation to a polite close. Or even better, avoid getting hooked into that repetitive loop from the start. Once you recognize the trigger words or phrases that usually kick off their standard monologue.
You can make your excuses early.
Exactly. Find a natural point to say, well, it was great catching up, but I really need to, or I should let you go. The underlying principle here is clear. Respect yourself and respect others by truly listening when it matters, when there's real exchange happening. But also know when it's time to respectfully fold and walk away if you realize you're just wasting everyone's time, including your own.
Okay, so we've covered listening, the input side. Now, once we've mastered that, what's the next big piece of the puzzle? Something that often gets overlooked, maybe?
Yeah.
What about something as fundamental as the actual sound of our voice?
Absolutely. Our voice, much like our physical presence, casts an immediate and powerful impression.
Right, it's one of the first things people notice.
Exactly. Alongside your face, it's one of your most immediately noticeable traits, and it profoundly influences how seriously people take you, how credible you seem, how confident you appear.
It seems a bit unfair judging someone on their voice.
It might seem unfair, but it's deeply ingrained in human nature. We make judgments about the quality of someone's voice within seconds of hearing them speak.
Wow, that fast.
That fast. However, this also presents a huge opportunity because unlike some physical traits, you can consciously develop and improve your voice.
Okay, so it's another trainable skill.
Definitely. And by doing so, you can instantly boost your perceived social status and dramatically improve the effectiveness of your conversations. The goal isn't to sound like someone else, but to cultivate a voice that is consistently audible, clear, and easy to understand.
So clarity is key.
Clarity, audibility, and it should still reflect your unique personality, of course, but it also needs to project a degree of assertiveness and expressiveness without resorting to, shouting or dominating the room.
It's about having confidence reflected in the sound itself.
Precisely. Confidence in what you're saying, mirrored by how you're saying it.
Okay, so let's get practical again. What are some exercises people can actually do to improve their voice?
Great. Let's dive into some practical voice exercises. First, focus on loosening your lips for better enunciation.
Enunciation, like pronouncing words clearly.
Exactly. Clear pronunciation simply makes interactions more pleasant and easier to follow. Even if someone disagrees with your content, or maybe even finds your personality a bit off-putting, clear speech makes the conversation itself less effortful for the listener.
Makes sense. What's next?
Next, and this is really critical, master diaphragmatic breathing.
Breathing from the diaphragm, not the chest.
Correct. Most authoritative, confident speakers breathe from their diaphragms, not their upper chest or throat. If you want that rich, full voice that doesn't wobble or break under pressure, you need to breathe deeply and evenly from your diaphragm.
How can you tell if you're doing it right?
Okay, a simple self-assessment. Put a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly. Take a normal breath. If your shoulders rise and fall significantly and your chest hand moves more than your belly hand, you're likely breathing primarily from your upper chest.
Okay.
To engage your diaphragm, try this. Imagine silent laughter, forcing air out through your nose using your stomach muscles. Feel that engagement.
Yeah, I can feel that lower down.
Good. Or try reading aloud from a book. Consciously inhale deeply from your diaphragm before each sentence, and then exhale smoothly and evenly as you speak, right through to the end of the sentence. This helps keep your voice steady and supported.
I always thought I breathed correctly, but it sounds like there's a real technique to it that could significantly change how you sound and how you're perceived.
There absolutely is, and it can be transformative for vocal presence. Then, to add life to your voice and avoid monotony, you need to vary your pitch. So, hum and sing.
Hum and sing. Seriously.
Seriously. Even just humming tunes during the day or singing along to the radio helps expand your vocal range. A monotone voice, one that stays on the same note, is just soul-destroying to listen to, isn't it?
Yeah, it really makes it hard to pay attention.
Exactly. Conversation is as much about the melody, the musicality, as it is about the content. Many people habitually speak at a continuously high pitch, maybe out of nervousness, and that doesn't tend to inspire confidence.
So aim lower.
Generally, yes. A deeper, richer tone is usually perceived as more authoritative and pleasant than a high, thin one. But don't try to drastically change your pitch overnight. You'll strain your vocal cords.
Right. Gradual change.
Gradual change. Try consciously lowering it just slightly over a few days. Get comfortable there, then maybe lower it a tiny bit more.
Right.
You can practice making simple sounds at various pitches, going up and down your range just to gain control and flexibility.
Okay, breathing, pitch. What else?
Pay close attention to your intonation. Varying your pitch or intonation doesn't just make your speech more pleasant to listen to, it fundamentally changes the meaning of your words.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Consider the simple question, will you be home by midnight? Putting the emphasis on you might imply impatience or accusation.
Right.
But changing it to will you be home by midnight puts the emphasis on the time, maybe seeking reassurance or confirmation. Same words, totally different feeling and implied meaning.
Wow. Okay, so subtle shifts make a big difference.
Huge difference. So if you find others sometimes react unexpectedly to what you say, take a moment to evaluate your intonation. Were you inadvertently communicating a specific, maybe unintended meaning? Were you perhaps causing offense without realizing it?
Self-awareness again.
Always. Now, for training tips, remember that vocal cord damage is a real risk if you overdo practice. Organizations like Toastmasters advise keeping voice exercise sessions short, maybe under 5 minutes at a time, and spacing them out throughout the day rather than doing one long session.
Okay, little and often.
Little and often. Also, consider your rate and timing the speed at which you speak. A measured, steady pace generally suggests confidence and authority. Most people speak somewhere between 120 and 190 words per minute.
How do you figure out your own rate?
You can read a passage aloud for exactly 1 minute and then count the words. While it's hard to drastically change your natural speaking speed, ensuring you breathe properly and enunciate clearly will make you easier to understand regardless of your pace. For important conversations, though, you can consciously choose to speed up slightly to convey excitement, or slow down deliberately for emphasis or gravity.
Makes sense. But what if these exercises just aren't cutting it? Should people consider getting professional help, or is that, maybe overkill for just improving everyday conversations?
Absolutely not overkill. If these self-help exercises don't yield the results you're hoping for, please don't feel embarrassed about hiring a voice coach or a singing teacher or even taking some acting lessons.
Politicians do it, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
Politicians, media figures, executives, they do it because they understand how critical their voice is to their public image and effectiveness. Many singing teachers, for instance, will record their students. Playing your own voice back, well, it can be painfully revelatory.
You mean hearing what you actually sound like?
Exactly. You might be quite surprised by how you actually sound versus how you think you sound. I know I was when I first heard myself recorded properly. If professional help isn't an option financially or logistically, try seeking honest feedback from an eloquent friend or relative whose opinion you trust. Just brace yourself for honesty.
Good advice. Prepare for the truth.
Be prepared. Finally, let's briefly touch on sex differences in voice appeal. Generally speaking, a warm, even tone with suitable variation in pitch and tone is respected by both sexes. It conveys confidence and engagement. However, when it comes to purely attracting the opposite sex, some studies suggest slight differences. Men tend to prefer slightly higher-pitched voices in women, and interestingly, women often instinctively raise their voices slightly when talking to a man they find attractive. And for men's voices, a deeper voice often suggests a larger body size, which tends to be preferred by both men in terms of perceiving other men, and women in terms of attraction. So from a purely attraction standpoint, women might find raising their pitch slightly helps, and men might find consciously lowering their voice slightly more appealing. But again, clarity and confidence are the universal baseline.
Let's pivot now and look at the world we live in, this modern paradox.
Yeah.
For those of us old enough to remember a pre-digital era.
Feels like ancient history sometimes.
Doesn't it? Today, communication apps, global connectivity, they're absolutely ubiquitous. And they certainly offer incredible benefits, connecting us across distances instantly.
No doubt about it.
Yet, as you mentioned earlier, despite being more connected technologically than ever before, we're simultaneously grappling with this pervasive loneliness epidemic. It affects millions, including surprisingly high numbers of young adults. What has gone wrong here? Why does online interaction so often seem to fall short of fostering genuine, deep connection?
It's a critical question for our times, and there are several interconnected reasons why online interaction often doesn't quite measure up. Firstly, and this is a big one, online, you don't really have to listen.
What do you mean?
In the digital realm, there's often no real obligation to pay close attention in real time. We skim emails, right? We read instant messages at our own leisure. We flick between our friends' social media feeds and whatever else we're watching or doing online simultaneously.
Multitasking communication.
Exactly. And this habit, this constant switching of attention on and off, makes it much harder to truly focus in real-life face-to-face situations. We become accustomed to seeking constant novelty, that next dopamine hit, and we might find ourselves getting impatient in person, even wishing people would just speak faster.
Our attention spans are being retrained, essentially.
They are. Secondly, online, you don't have to think on your feet in the same way.
Oh.
Have you noticed how rare it is to see genuinely constructive, evolving, back-and-forth discussions in many online forums or comment sections?
Yeah, it often descends into people just stating opinions, maybe talking past each other.
Precisely. Or simply dumping their opinion and then leaving the conversation the dump and run. There's often no need for those core conversation skills like genuine listening, interpreting subtle nonverbal cues, or adapting your point based on what someone just said.
The immediate feedback loop is missing.
It is. So if most of your social interaction comes primarily from the internet, you're essentially teaching yourself a kind of conversational laziness. When you're then confronted with a real dynamic face-to-face conversation, you might feel exposed, underprepared. The rapid exchange of ideas, the spark that makes lively conversations so fun, can feel absent or difficult to achieve.
Because you're used to having time to craft the perfect response online.
Exactly. Online, you can take minutes, hours, even days to craft that witty reply or considered argument. But in real life, you have to face the music, be brave, think on your feet, and accept responsibility for your ideas right there in the moment.
That's a really good point. There's a certain vulnerability and accountability that comes with real-time interaction. It forces you to engage differently.
Absolutely. And thirdly, let's be honest, anything goes on the internet, or at least it often feels that way.
Less accountability.
Far less social disapproval, generally. It feels easier for people to say hurtful things, to dump opinions without justification, and then simply run away from the thread without any real obligation to return or face consequences. This often means we collectively forget how to argue constructively, how to solve problems together through dialogue, because there are fewer immediate social repercussions for poor communication online.
The normal social checks and balances are weaker.
Much weaker. And finally, there's the jealousy factor. This is a really insidious one. Studies have shown that simply viewing curated social media profiles, even profiles of totally fictitious people designed to look healthy and popular, can cause a measurable drop in a college student's self-esteem.
Wow. Just seeing idealized versions of life.
Imagine what constantly comparing yourself, day in and day out, to others' carefully curated and often quite unrealistic online lives does to your mental health over time.
It creates a skewed perception of reality.
Totally skewed. Face-to-face interaction, however, tends to diminish that jealousy. It allows you to gain more authentic insight into someone else's life, revealing their struggles alongside their successes. It helps build richer, more genuine relationships based on reality, not just highlight reels. It helps you realize that everyone has challenges, reducing that harmful sense of unfair comparison.
So if digital interaction has these significant downsides, reduced listening, less critical thinking on the spot, fewer social consequences, and increased jealousy, what's the antidote? You mentioned a digital detox. That sounds challenging.
It can be challenging initially. The idea is simply to intentionally, consciously cut back on that online-only communication for a period. For some, that might mean quitting social media apps entirely for a week, reducing passive scrolling, maybe vowing not to initiate text-based conversations and opting for calls or in-person meets instead.
What's the typical experience? You mentioned FOMO.
Yes, that initial feeling is often one of isolation and FOMO, the fear of missing out on what everyone else is seemingly doing or talking about online.
Which can be intense.
It can be, but then often comes a profound revelation. The realization might hit you, wait, if I really cared about what was happening in my friends' lives, I could actually arrange to see them in person.
Shifting from passive observation to active connection.
Exactly. That insight often leads to an immediate uplift, especially after having a real face-to-face meeting, maybe just grabbing coffee with a friend you haven't properly talked to in ages. Is it harder to arrange in-person meetings than to just send a text or tap a like button?
Oh, definitely. More effort involved.
For sure. But is it more rewarding? Almost invariably, yes. We speak so much faster than we type, and so much crucial meaning is conveyed through tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, all the stuff that text communication completely lacks.
You get the full picture.
You get the full picture. And taking these kinds of digital detoxes, even short ones, really helps keep your actual conversation skills sharp. It forces you to interact in real time again, to think on your feet, to communicate your ideas clearly, to form coherent arguments on the spot.
It's like exercising a muscle that's gotten weak.
That's a perfect analogy. And here's a thought. The more uncomfortable the idea of a digital detox makes you feel, the more urgently you probably need a break from constant online interaction.
Ouch. Good point. What about friends who live far away?
Great question. For long-distance relationships, a modified detox using video calls, Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, is still far, far superior to relying solely on text messages or social media comments. You get the voice, the face, much more of the person.
And this applies in the workplace too, presumably.
Oh, powerfully in the workplace. Think about the sheer ludicrousness sometimes of emailing a colleague who is sitting just a few meters away from you.
Instead of just getting up and talking to them? Right. Vowing to just get up and talk whenever possible is a simple but incredibly effective change. You resolve issues faster, build better rapport. Honestly, our great-grandparents would probably be shocked by how we often choose to speak to one another these days via screens.
True.
The wider implication here is significant. By consciously prioritizing real, face-to-face, or at least voice-to-voice interaction whenever feasible, we can begin to push back against that loneliness epidemic and start building more genuine, supportive connections in a world that desperately seems to need them.
Okay, let's now tackle something really core. A fear that can be paralyzing for so many people in social situations. The fear of being judged.
Ah, yes, the fear of what others think.
While some individuals experience this to an extreme degree, like those diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, we're focusing here on the milder but far more common form, that everyday anxiety about saying the wrong thing, looking foolish, not being liked.
It's natural, isn't it? We're social creatures. We have an innate desire to belong, to be liked, to avoid being ostracized.
Right. But the problem arises when that fear of judgment becomes debilitating, when it stops you from expressing your genuine opinions or from even attempting to build potentially meaningful relationships because you're too afraid of disapproval.
That's where it crosses the line from natural caution to a real hindrance. And let's be blunt about it.
Yeah.
The reality is, people do judge.
Okay, let's just accept that.
Well, you have
Yeah.
to. People will form opinions about you based on your looks, your mannerisms, what you say, how you behave, countless other characteristics, conscious and subconscious. It is simply impossible to please everyone all the time.
You shouldn't try to.
You shouldn't even try. Just as you have the right to decide who you want to spend your time with, who you connect with, others have the absolute right to form their own opinions about you. The goal isn't to somehow magically control their judgment. You can't. The goal is to accept yourself, build your own inner self-confidence, and learn to let go of others' criticisms, even the harsh ones.
So it starts internally.
It absolutely has to start internally. So step one is build self-confidence.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True, but crucial. When you genuinely accept and are reasonably content with who you are, flaws and all, others' opinions simply bother you far less. You might still feel a sting from unkind words, of course, but it won't rattle you for long. You'll be able to bounce back more quickly, knowing deep down that you're okay as you are.
So how do you build that? What are the practical steps?
One crucial way is to actively challenge your negative self-talk.
That inner critic.
Exactly, that voice in your head. Imagine if someone followed you around all day, constantly shouting insults and pointing out your flaws. You feel terrible, right?
Miserable.
Yet so many of us do this to ourselves internally, constantly berating ourselves, dwelling on failures or perceived shortcomings. You cannot build true self-confidence on a foundation of self-criticism.
So what do you do about it?
You need to actively fight back. Distract yourself when those thoughts start spiraling. Replace harsh judgments with more neutral, objective statements. Some people even find it helpful to literally say S stop P out loud or in their head to interrupt the pattern. Therapy can also be incredibly helpful here, and a side benefit. Eliminating your own negative self-talk makes you much better at recognizing when others are genuinely bullying or being unfair to you, helping you avoid toxic relationships.
That's a great point. What else builds confidence?
Another powerful way is to get good at something. Anything, really.
A hobby. A
But
skill.
Yeah. That warm feeling of accomplishment you get when you master a new skill, whether it's learning an instrument, coding, gardening, baking bread, that's a powerful foundation for self-belief. It proves to yourself that you are capable of learning, growing, developing your talents.
And it gives you something to talk about.
Exactly. A fantastic dual benefit. It boosts your internal confidence and provides you with excellent, high-quality conversation material. You'll never be stuck when someone asks, "So, what have you been up to recently?"
Nice.
Yeah.
What else?
Also, change what you can change and accept what you can't.
Distinguishing between the two.
Critically, there are traits you simply cannot alter. If someone finds you ugly, for example, that's their subjective opinion based on their preferences. It's a waste of time and energy trying to cater to arbitrary external standards of attractiveness. Accept it and move on. But if you fear others think you're, say, boring or ignorant on certain topics...
Those are things you can potentially change.
Exactly. You can actively decide to become more interesting, more informed, read more widely, develop new interests. This is a win-win. You grow and become more knowledgeable or engaging for yourself, regardless of others' judgment, and as a byproduct, you likely become more engaging in conversations.
So it's about genuine internal growth, focused on yourself, not just performing for others.
Hmm.
Which brings me to something you hear a lot in self-help. Fake it till you make it. Does that apply to confidence?
Ugh, the fake it till you make it approach. Look, for genuine self-confidence, frankly, it doesn't really work. It might get you through a specific scary presentation, maybe, but it's not a strategy for building deep, authentic self-worth.
Why not?
Because highly sensitive and empathetic people, and there are a lot of them, are often incredibly adept at detecting false confidence, that kind of surface-level bravado.
Yeah.
It often comes across as arrogance or insecurity masked. Trying to constantly fake it is utterly exhausting. It feels fraudulent, like you're wearing a mask, and it leaves you with this persistent, gnawing fear of being found out.
It sounds stressful.
Incredibly stressful. Research has even shown that people can often accurately judge your underlying level of self-esteem within just 1 minute of meeting you. Good communication, good relationships, they are rooted in authenticity, in being true to yourself. Trying to constantly quash your true self just leads to discomfort and that fear of exposure. It's far better and ultimately more effective to work on building real confidence from the inside out.
Okay, so build real confidence, don't just fake it. What's the second big step after building self-confidence?
Step 2 is stop making everything about you.
What do you mean by that?
If you're constantly worrying about what other people are thinking about you, about whether they're judging you, it implies on some level that you believe you're the center of the universe, that people are spending significant amounts of their time and mental energy formulating opinions about you.
Which probably isn't true.
It's almost certainly not true. The reality is, once you've left the room or ended the conversation, most people move on very quickly. They have their own lives, their own worries, their own insecurities to deal with. Even if you did say something you perceive as stupid or awkward, it's likely a fleeting thought for them, if they even registered it at all.
So we overestimate how much others focus on us.
Massively. So when you find yourself ruminating, worrying about how you came across, actively shift your focus. Instead of analyzing yourself, try to genuinely learn about the other person. Ask questions about their lives, their opinions, their activities. Turn the spotlight outward.
Get out of your own head.
Exactly. Get out of your own head. You'll likely discover that even people who seem incredibly intimidating or judgmental are often just complex, flawed human beings with their own stuff going on, just like you. And here's a final comforting thought. Most judgments people might form are never actually verbalized or shared. So why torture yourself worrying about opinions you don't even know exist? Give others permission to have their opinions. You can't force them to change their minds anyway, so just let it be and focus on being your authentic self.
That's actually quite liberating, letting go of trying to control others' thoughts. But what about rejection? That still stings, even if you have self-confidence. Someone turns you down for a date, or you don't get the job. It hurts.
It absolutely does hurt. You're right. It's entirely natural to feel pain when you experience social rejection. Neuroscientists have found that the same parts of the brain that are activated by physical pain are also activated by social rejection. That feeling of a literal ache in your chest, it can be real.
So the pain is valid.
The pain is completely valid. However, while you can't control their decision to reject you, you have a critical choice point. You can control your response and, importantly, how you frame the situation internally.
How you interpret it.
Exactly. Let me share a personal anecdote. When I was about 22, I spent hours chatting with a woman at a party, felt a real connection, asked her out, and she turned me down flat. My immediate gut assumption was, she rejected me because she thinks I'm ugly. I felt awful about myself for weeks.
Ouch. Been there.
Right. But if you pause and consider multiple possible frames for that rejection, you see other possibilities, don't you? Maybe it was. She rejected me because she simply doesn't want to date anyone right now. Or she sensed we might not be romantically compatible long term. Or even she actually has a boyfriend and was just being friendly. Or she was just enjoying the attention and wanted an ego boost.
So many other reasons that have nothing to do with you personally.
Exactly. You might genuinely never know the true reason, but you absolutely control the narrative you tell yourself. Not all rejection is a negative judgment on your fundamental worth. And remember, one person's opinion, one person's rejection, doesn't reflect how everyone sees you. It's just one data point. My experience later taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes you have absolutely no idea what's going on behind the scenes in someone else's life. What seems like a personal slight might be entirely unrelated to you. Learning to not take it personally is key to resilience.
That's a really powerful way to reframe rejection, putting the control back in our own hands regarding our response. Now, let's explore what truly connects two people on a really profound level. You might think it's, love or deep friendship or shared goals, and those are important. But I'd argue, maybe you agree, that the real glue holding relationships together, the force that allows for true intimacy and understanding, is empathy.
I couldn't agree more. The impact of empathy in conversation is immense. It's what creates a genuinely safe environment.
A safe space.
Exactly. When someone feels truly heard, truly understood, truly accepted without judgment, they're far more likely to open up. They might share their deepest emotions, their vulnerabilities, maybe even unpleasant memories or difficult experiences.
Things they wouldn't normally share.
Right. And that is what sets the stage for genuinely life-changing relationships, whether it's with a partner, a friend, a family member, even a colleague. If you genuinely want to help someone, maybe offer support or advice, you first need to truly understand their problem from their perspective. And empathy is the most powerful tool we have for getting inside their head, seeing the world through their eyes.
Okay, so we know it's crucial, but how do you actually signal empathy effectively in a conversation? How do you show it?
Great question. It's not just about feeling it, it's about demonstrating it. First, and this is often hard, refrain from jumping in with unsolicited advice.
The urge to fix things?
Exactly. We often want to help by offering solutions. But unless someone explicitly asks for your suggestions, assume they don't want them right now. They might just need to be heard. Jumping in with advice can feel like you're minimizing their problem or not trusting them to figure it out.
So hold back the solutions unless asked.
Hold back. Second, actively show expansive listening. We touched on this earlier. This means happily, patiently following their train of thought wherever it leads, crucially, without judgment. Even a hint of impatience aside, checking your watch, interrupting, can cause them to shut down immediately. They'll assume you just want the conversation to be over or that you disapprove.
So patience and non-judgment are key.
Absolutely vital. Third, give them time to empty the tank. We all know that feeling sometimes, right? Of just needing to get everything out, express everything that's on our minds without being cut off.
Yeah, just letting it all flow.
When you're the listener in an empathetic conversation, allow the other person to say everything they need to say. Don't interrupt, even if you have a related thought or question. Interrupting signals, even unintentionally, that your thoughts are more important than their need to speak, which is the exact opposite of the message you want to send when building empathy.
Let them finish complete.
Let them finish. Fourth, strive to adopt an attitude of unconditional positive regard, or UPR.
Okay, that sounds like a therapy term. What does it mean in practice?
It comes from humanistic psychology, particularly Carl Rogers. In essence, it means accepting the other person completely as they are in that moment, regardless of their speech, their actions, their feelings. It doesn't mean you have to agree with bad behavior or harmful beliefs.
Right, it's not endorsement.
No, it's not endorsement. It's about consciously suspending your own personal biases, your judgments, your criticisms for the duration of that deep listening. You operate from the assumption that, at their core, they are a good, rational person who is doing their best and is capable of growth and change, even if their current behavior seems problematic to you.
Wow, that sounds incredibly challenging in practice, especially if someone shares something you strongly disagree with or find morally questionable. How do listeners truly apply that suspension of personal biases in real time?
It is incredibly challenging. It takes conscious effort and practice. It's about mentally telling yourself, my primary job right now is not to evaluate, not to judge, not to correct, but simply to understand. How does this make sense to them? What is their experience? What are they feeling?
Shifting from evaluation to understanding.
Precisely. It's a constant mental discipline to listen for their perspective, their feelings, and what makes sense within their worldview, rather than immediately filtering everything through your own lens. That shift alone, even if imperfectly executed, is incredibly transformative for building connection and trust.
So when you successfully create that safe space, what happens? You mentioned people might share deep secrets.
Yes. When you genuinely create that safe, non-judgmental space, you should expect that deep personal secrets might emerge. Some revelations might be sad, but perhaps relatable, like someone sharing they lost their job. But others might genuinely shock you, perhaps revealing past trauma, difficult choices, or ongoing struggles you had no idea about.
How do you react in that moment without breaking the trust?
It's okay and often important to show your genuine emotional reaction. Maybe you feel outrage on their behalf or deep sadness. But the key is, don't make your emotions the center of the conversation.
Keep the focus on them.
Keep the focus on them. You can phrase your reaction carefully. Wow, to me, that sounds absolutely terrible. Or, hearing that, I can't help but feel really sad for you and what you went through. Be authentic with your feelings, but immediately reassure them that they aren't to blame for your reaction. Emphasize that your feelings are yours alone to manage and that you feel honored they trusted you enough to share something so personal.
That requires real emotional regulation on the listener's part.
It does. And related to this, a very common pitfall to avoid is the Me Too trap.
Trying to relate by sharing your own story.
Exactly. There's a strong, often well-intentioned urge to connect by immediately sharing your own similar experience. Oh, that happened to me too, let me tell you. But it risks appearing insensitive or like you're hijacking the
Or
conversation.
thinking it about you again.
Right when they need the focus to be on them. I remember a friend, Sam, was devastated after losing his apartment unexpectedly. My immediate reaction was to launch into a story about a time I had trouble finding accommodation in college. It completely missed the mark.
Yeah, not helpful in that moment.
Not helpful at all. The lesson is, the conversation in that empathetic moment isn't about you. Make a mental note of your own triggered memories or related experiences and process them later, perhaps with someone else. The only real exception is if they explicitly ask you, do you know what I mean? Or have you ever experienced anything like this? Then you can share briefly, always bringing the focus back to them.
That's such a common mistake, though. I think many of us are guilty of it. We want to connect, but sometimes our eagerness backfires. How do you manage the emotional toll of having these deep, empathetic conversations? It sounds draining.
That's a crucial point and often overlooked. Managing the emotional labor. Having these kinds of deep conversations, especially about difficult topics like bereavement, serious illness, divorce, trauma, it can be incredibly draining for the listener.
You absorb some of that emotion.
You do. You're not a human sponge, capable of soaking up infinite amounts of pain without consequence. Compassion fatigue is a very real phenomenon. It's that feeling where you become so emotionally drained from supporting others that you start to feel numb, detached, maybe even resentful. It's like your empathy battery has run completely dry.
So how do you prevent or manage that?
It's essential to build in self-care. Specifically, schedule some alone time after having a particularly heavy or draining conversation. You need time to decompress, process your own feelings, and recharge your emotional batteries. Never forget that your own well-being is just as important as anyone else's. You can't pour from an empty cup. This is especially critical for people in caring professions, but it applies to anyone who engages in deep, supportive conversations.
Okay, we've talked a lot about encouraging conversation, opening people up, deep connection through empathy. But now let's shift gears completely to an often much harder skill, the art of not talking, knowing when to hold your tongue.
The flip side of the coin, equally important, often harder to master.
Right. The opposite problem of struggling to keep a conversation going is that almost compulsive desire many of us have to jump in, to interrupt, to voice every single thought that pops into our head.
We've all done it.
Oh, absolutely. From childhood onwards, don't interrupt is something we hear. But as adults, this bad habit can really sour even good conversations. It can happen easily, especially when you feel a strong rapport with someone, you feel like you share ideas, and you just want to chime in constantly.
It can feel like collaboration, but it often comes across as impatience or dominance. Understanding the internal impulses that lead to overtalking and interruption can really help you start to manage them.
Okay, what are those impulses? What's going on in our heads?
Well, several things might be happening. Sometimes it's the desire to express total agreement. You want to jump in and say, yes, exactly. To show you're on their team, you get it.
To show solidarity.
Right. But honestly, there's often no real value in barging in just to agree. A nod or a simple is usually enough. Let them finish their point, or could be the opposite. The desire to express total disagreement. This overwhelming urge to correct them immediately, to make them see things from your point of view. Spoiler alert, this almost never works mid-flow.
It just escalates things, usually.
Usually. Then there's the desire to correct a trivial point pedantry, picking up on minor errors, like a mispronunciation, a slightly wrong date. Unless the error fundamentally changes the meaning or is critical, pointing it out just gains you a reputation for being annoying. It diminishes the speaker's point and undermines rapport. Just let it go.
Resist the urge to be the fact checker.
Resist. Or perhaps it's the desire to sling a witty remark or insult. For people who love banter and quick humor, the opportunity to jump in with a clever line can feel almost irresistible.
Seizing the moment.
But the speaker's right to finish their thought is generally more important than your chance to show off your humor. It comes down to respect for their turn. Finally, maybe it's the desire to ask a question about a topic they've already moved on from, or the urge to offer unsolicited advice again. If you're actively listening for knowledge, relevant questions will arise. Just make a mental note, formulate them internally, and wait for an appropriate pause to ask later. And as we said with empathy, unsolicited advice is often pointless and can even be counterproductive. Wait for permission, then be succinct.
That's a really insightful list of those internal urges. Recognizing them is the first step. So how do you actually implement these keep quiet rules in the moment? What are the practical steps, especially if you recognize yourself as maybe a chronic interrupter?
Well, my own experience being called out by a friend for being a chronic interrupter, using that exact phrase with some tough love, was a real wake-up call.
That must have stung a bit.
Oh, it did. But it was helpful. A practical step, if you're brave enough, is to seek honest feedback from a close, trusted friend. Ask them, do I interrupt too much? And if they say yes, maybe even agree on a subtle hand signal they can use privately whenever you start to do it in conversations with them.
Instant feedback.
Instant private feedback. This immediate awareness is incredibly powerful for helping you recognize your own patterns of interjection. When do you do it? Who do you do it with? What triggers it?
You start to see the habit.
You really do.
Yeah.
Additionally, practicing mindfulness can be surprisingly helpful here. Just sitting with your thoughts sometimes, observing them without acting on them, helps you realize just how much mental junk passes through your head that truly doesn't need to be verbalized or shared. You'll be surprised at how much you might have planned to say that actually adds very little value to the conversation.
Filtering internally before speaking.
Exactly. Now, beyond just interrupting, another huge aspect of holding your tongue is discretion. This means knowing when to avoid gossip and when to keep confidential information to yourself.
Ugh. Gossip. So tempting sometimes.
It's deeply ingrained in human nature, isn't it? Reality TV thrives on it. Negative gossip especially can feel particularly alluring, making us feel in the know or temporarily bonding us with the person we're gossiping with.
But the consequences?
The consequences can be devastating. Gossiping ruins your reputation. People learn they can't trust you. It damages the person being talked about. That short-term thrill or feeling of connection is simply not worth the potential long-term fallout. So when you feel that urge to share something juicy or confidential about someone else, force yourself to pause and ask these crucial questions.
Okay, what should we ask ourselves?
First, why am I so keen to share this right now? Really examine your true motives. Is it revenge? Are you feeling insecure and trying to make yourself feel better by putting someone else down? Are you bored? Address that underlying issue directly, rather than involving a third party through gossip. Second, what might happen if the person I tell passes this information on? Even if they swear secrecy, can you truly trust them? Think through the worst-case scenario. Loyalties can shift, secrets get out. Are you prepared for that? Third, do I even know if this information is actually true? Things change, situations evolve. Maybe what you heard was a misunderstanding or is already outdated. Avoid spreading rumors or inventing details. Think about the potential harm if the information is wrong. And finally, what positive or uplifting messages could I pass on instead? Gossip often serves as conversational filler when we lack genuine connection or interesting things to talk about. Focus on sharing positive news, neutral topics, or developing your own interests so you have more substantial things to discuss.
That's a great filter. Focus on the positive or the factual, not the potentially harmful speculation.
Exactly. The golden rule of discretion is simple. If in doubt, don't keep talking. Prioritize your reputation, the trust others place in you, and your relationships over the fleeting, often damaging satisfaction of gossip. Unless it's genuinely a situation involving harm or danger, where speaking up is necessary, err on the side of caution and silence.
That's invaluable advice on discretion and resisting those impulses. It takes real self-awareness and discipline. Now, let's turn to another delicate but incredibly important area. The art of mending broken ties, repairing relationships. Arguments happen, people drift apart, it's a common part of life. The challenge is often knowing how to reach out effectively and repair those connections without making things worse.
It's a common hurdle, definitely, but as you say, often entirely surmountable with the right approach. Let's start with the scenario of reconnecting after a specific fight or falling out.
Okay, the relationship ended on bad terms.
Right. Step one, and this is non-negotiable, check your attitude. Before you even think about making contact, you need to ensure you are psychologically ready and willing to genuinely let go of the past conflict.
No lingering resentment.
Absolutely no lingering resentment, no hidden agenda, no fantasies of revenge or making them admit they were wrong. The key question you have to ask yourself honestly is, are you willing to value the friendship or relationship more than your need to be right about the past issue?
That's the core requirement.
It's the absolute core requirement. Only when the answer is a definitive yes should you even consider proceeding. You also need to be prepared to let the original issue lie forever if you reconnect, but can't reach an agreement on what happened. You have to be willing to move on regardless.
Okay, so attitude check first. What's step 2?
Step 2, set up the conversation with an "I've realized" email.
Email, not phone call.
For this specific situation, reconnecting after a fight email is often better than a cold call or text. It feels less unnerving for the other person, gives them time to read it at their leisure, digest it emotionally, and decide how to respond without feeling put on the spot. Plus, it gives you a record of what you said.
Makes sense. What should the email say?
Keep it relatively brief. The key is to frame it around what you've realized or learned since the conflict. Use phrases like, "Thinking things over, I've realized that my friendships are really important to me." Or, "I've realized that I sometimes find it hard to work out problems effectively." This approach sounds sincere, non-threatening, and focuses on your growth rather than blaming them.
So taking responsibility for your part, or at least your learning.
Exactly. End the email by simply requesting to call or meet up to talk, expressing hope that they might be willing to set something up. And crucially, be prepared for the possibility of no reply or a negative reply, and be willing to respect their decision and let it go if they're not ready.
Okay, manage your expectations. What if they agree to meet? Step 3.
Step 3, meet up and talk clear the air early, if necessary. If you do meet, and if it feels like the past issue is still hanging in the air and needs addressing to truly move forward, do it early in the conversation. Get it out of the way.
Don't let it fester.
Don't let it fester, but be flexible. Be prepared to listen to their perspective, perhaps adjust your own view of events, and importantly, be ready to sincerely apologize if you realize you caused more hurt than you initially imagined.
And after clearing the air,
Step 4, treat them like anyone else. Once you've navigated the initial apologies or clarifications, consciously shift the conversation back to the normal topics you used to discuss. Talk about current events, hobbies, mutual friends. Don't keep dwelling on the past conflict. Show them you're ready to resume the relationship on normal terms.
okay, that's a clear roadmap for post-conflict reconnection. But what about that other common scenario, where you didn't have a big fight, you just drifted apart? Like old college friends or former work buddies you were close to. That feels different.
It is different and very, very common. Life happens, circumstances change. If there's no specific animosity or unresolved conflict, just distance, you can generally skip the cautious email step and go straight to a phone call, or maybe a direct message on social media if you don't have their number.
Be more direct.
Yeah, be more direct and casual. Just reach out, say hello, and suggest hanging out or catching up properly sometime soon. When you do connect, whether it's on the phone or in person, here are a few tips for bridging that time gap.
Okay, how to handle that first catch-up conversation.
First, acknowledge the time gap openly. Don't pretend it's only been a short while if it's been years. Pair the acknowledgement with a positive statement like, "Wow, it's been ages. It's so great to see you, hear your voice. You're looking great." Second, harness a little nostalgia. A few brief, warm references to shared history. A funny old memory, a place you used to go, can quickly reestablish that feeling of connection and familiarity. Don't overdo it, but a little goes a long way. Third, ask about mutual contacts. Have you seen so-and-so recently? This is usually fertile ground for conversation and can even lead to reconnecting with other people from that shared past. Fourth, talk about dreams and goals, but subtly. Instead of grilling them on past ambitions, did you ever finish that novel? Maybe ask more gently about their hopes and dreams for the future, which allows them to share past achievements or future aspirations naturally. Then move to the present tense. Ask about their current life work, family, hobbies. Fall back on those standard, reliable conversation topics. And finally, if the connection feels good and you genuinely want to maintain it, close with a concrete suggestion or invitation for the future. Maybe mention an event you could go to, or suggest getting together again soon. Keep the flame alive, but only if you truly want to continue the relationship. Don't make empty promises.
That all sounds like great advice for rekindling those older connections. It's really about making that proactive effort. Now, what about maintaining relationships that are currently long distance? It's such a reality for so many people in the 21st century, whether it's romantic, platonic, or familial. How do you keep those bonds strong across the miles?
It's definitely a challenge, but absolutely possible to maintain close, intimate bonds even with years of geographical separation. Research suggests several key components are vital for success. First, assurances. Don't assume the other person knows you appreciate them or value the relationship. Regularly express your appreciation, tell them you enjoy talking to them, remind them they're important to you. These verbal assurances help counter the insecurity that can naturally creep in with distance. Second, openness. Share your problems, your daily life, your innermost thoughts to maintain intimacy. Also, be open about how the distance itself affects you and be willing to negotiate communication frequency. Sometimes quality, a long video call once a week, is better than quantity. Brief texts every day. Be flexible. Third, conflict management. This is crucial. Make it a rule, if possible, to resolve any significant differences or misunderstandings via video call, like Skype or Zoom, not over text or even just a phone call. Seeing facial expressions and body language is vital for understanding tone and preventing negative feelings from festering based on misinterpretations.
Yeah, text arguments are the worst.
They really are. Fourth, sharing tasks and activities. Find creative online substitutes for shared experiences. Play online games together, stream movies simultaneously while chatting, work on a shared document, even just have meals together via webcam. This builds mutual experiences and gives you more to talk about than just catching up on news. Fifth, positivity. Try to start and close your conversations on a positive note. Share the positive impact they have on your life, even from afar. Find the upsides of the distance if you can, maybe more focused work time. Also, giving advice, if asked, can help both people feel more involved in each other's offline lives. And drawing on social networks, talk about mutual friends, maybe even invite mutual friends to join an online chat sometimes.
So it's about being intentional and creative and bridging the distance.
Very much so. And prioritize video calling over emails or texts whenever possible for maintaining real intimacy. Oh, and don't underestimate the power of old school methods. Sending occasional gifts or handwritten letters can feel incredibly special and meaningful in our overwhelmingly digital age.
Okay, we've explored building, repairing, and maintaining connections. But let's be real, not all conversations are smooth sailing. Let's dive into the trickier aspects of communication now. Things like handling conflict, dealing with persistent negativity, and ethically influencing others. Negativity especially seems like such a pervasive problem that can really drag down social lives.
It truly is, and it can be incredibly draining to be around. Let's start by identifying and consciously trying to kick some common negative conversational habits. These often fall into a few recurring patterns. First, there's starting every conversation with a complaint. Someone asks an innocent opener like, "How are you?" or "How was your weekend?" And the immediate response is negative.
The Eeyore effect.
Exactly. Instead of a litany of woes, try to rephrase to be accurate but less downbeat. Maybe, "I'm doing okay, actually, just got a bit of a headache today," rather than launching into a full medical history. Related to this is being a whiny, soul-destroying individual. This isn't just an occasional complaint. It's chronic negativity that poisons every conversation and builds a reputation. People will actively start avoiding you if every interaction leaves them feeling drained.
Energy vampires.
Pretty much. Also, shutting down upbeat comments. Resist the urge to pass on your bad mood if someone else is happy or excited. Instead, try to ride the wave of their happiness. It fosters positive interaction and might even lift your own spirits. Don't be the person who always bursts the bubble. Then there's interjecting with a negative opinion for no apparent reason. Just dropping in a critical comment that lowers the tone, makes others uncomfortable, and risks starting unnecessary arguments. Ask yourself, does this need to be said right now? Also, watch out for pessimistic predictions, not based on evidence, constantly projecting bleak outcomes without any real proof. Before playing the prophet of doom, ask yourself, do I really have solid evidence for this, or am I just projecting my own anxiety?
That's a good check. What else falls under negative habits?
Pedantry, which we mentioned before, constantly pointing out minor mistakes. Unless it's a serious factual error with consequences, just let it slide. It's usually more irritating than helpful. Forgetting where you are. Different social groups and contexts have different tolerance levels for negativity or dark humor. Err on the side of positivity, especially in professional settings or with people you don't know well, diminishing others by one-upping. This is that narcissistic show-off behavior where you have to top every story. If someone shares an achievement or an experience, let them have their moment. Constantly one-upping just signals insecurity and prevents real connection. No one will want to open up to you later if you always make it about yourself. Expecting someone else to do all the work. This can stem from shyness or just laziness. If you consistently give one-word answers or fail to ask questions, you're essentially inviting the other person to perform for you. Step up, Ask questions, offer thoughtful responses. Conversation is a two-way street. Oversharing too much personal information or too many problems too soon, this can come across as insecure or lacking boundaries. Read the room in the relationship. Deep vulnerability is earned, not demanded upfront. And finally, allowing negative conversations to continue indefinitely. You have a choice. You can try to gently turn the conversation towards more positive or neutral ground, or you can choose to politely bring it to a close. You don't have to wallow in negativity just because someone else wants to.
That's a really comprehensive list of what not to do. It highlights how easily negativity can creep in. But what about the flip side, trying to influence others positively? Is it inherently bad to try and control someone's behavior or change their mind through conversation? It sounds like a tricky ethical line.
It is a tricky line, and it's something we all do constantly, often without even realizing it or labeling it as manipulation.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. Is it bad to try and control someone's behavior? When you ask a friend to pick up some beer on their way over, or you ask your boss for 5 minutes of their time, technically, you're trying to influence or control their behavior.
Yeah, I suppose so, in a small way.
These are usually benign examples. We also use conversation all the time to try and change how someone feels or thinks. Trying to cheer up a partner who's had a bad day, recommending a phone or a movie you liked, persuading a colleague about the best way to approach a project. This kind of benign manipulation is just a normal part of human interaction.
So manipulation isn't always negative.
The word itself has negative connotations, but manipulation simply means handling something or someone skillfully to achieve a desired outcome. It becomes ethically problematic when it disrespects the other person's rights, autonomy, or well-being. But influencing others respectfully is essential for collaboration and relationships.
Okay, so what are the guidelines for ethical influence? How do we persuade or guide without crossing that line?
Good question. Here are some key guidelines. First, don't try to change minds just for the sake of it. Avoid challenging someone's deeply cherished beliefs or values just to prove your own persuasive powers or to win an argument. If they show discomfort or clearly don't want to engage, respect that and drop it. Second, don't play people off against one another. Use your communication skills to be a peacemaker or a bridge builder, not an agitator who stirs up conflict for drama or personal gain. Third, don't manipulate those who are at a clear disadvantage. Play fair. Don't use jargon to confuse someone less knowledgeable. Don't exploit naivety. Don't pressure someone who's vulnerable. And a good general check. Ask yourself, would my idol or someone I deeply respect admire how I'm handling this conversation? Could I justify my approach to my parents or a mentor? Knowing how conversation works comes with a responsibility to use that knowledge ethically.
That's a good moral compass check. What about lying? That feels inherently unethical in communication. When, if ever, is it acceptable?
Lying is a really tough one. Generally speaking, yes, it's unethical in communication. It builds relationships that are intrinsically less good based on falsehood. It robs the other person of the ability to make informed decisions. And it can subtly corrupt the liar over time.
But are there exceptions?
Most ethicists would say yes, but they are limited. Lying might be considered acceptable when it passes the test of publicity. This is a philosophical concept. Essentially, would most reasonable ethical people agree it was the right thing to do in that specific extreme circumstance if all the facts were known? The classic example is lying to protect innocent lives, like hiding refugees from persecutors, or when it relates to truly trivial matters like being 5 minutes late versus 10 minutes late, where the exact truth causes unnecessary minor friction. Or to spare feelings over very minor issues, the classic white lie about liking someone's new, slightly questionable hat. And sometimes lying is implicitly expected as part of social conventions, like saying it was a pleasure doing business with you, even if it wasn't particularly pleasurable.
So, very limited circumstances.
Very limited. And remember the consequences. Lies can encourage future problems. If you pretend to like an unpleasant dish, you might get served it again. They're hard to predict. A small lie can snowball. And keeping track of lies can become incredibly complicated, that tangled web we weave. Often, telling the truth, perhaps gently or diplomatically, is simply easier and better in the long run. And one more ethical point. Humor at the expense of others. Use this with extreme care. It really only works with close friends who genuinely share your sense of humor and take it in the right spirit. Mocking others, even playfully, can be cruel and cut surprisingly deep, especially if it touches on an insecurity. If in doubt about how it will land, just cut the teasing.
So the overarching theme is authenticity, discernment, respect, and considering the impact on the other person. How do we then actively use conversation to gain insight and maybe even persuade ethically? It sounds like asking good questions is fundamental.
absolutely fundamental. The art of asking excellent questions is central. It's how you gain insight, truly understand others' perspectives, show genuine interest, and it's often seen as a mark of good judgment and intelligence itself.
Okay, so what kinds of questions are we talking about?
We can broadly categorize them. First, there are social questions aimed at building rapport and intimacy. The key here is switching the spotlight onto the other person. Asking thoughtful questions encourages them to open up. A good technique is pre-disclosure. Share something a little personal about yourself first to build trust, then ask a related personal question. For example, I've always dreamed of traveling more. What's the biggest travel dream you have?
So you offer vulnerability first.
Exactly. It makes it feel reciprocal, not like an interrogation. There's actually a famous psychological procedure developed by Arthur Aaron called the closeness generating procedure, which uses a specific set of escalating questions designed to quickly build intimacy between strangers. It moves carefully from small talk, what would be a perfect day for you, to deeper, more personal questions. What is one thing you've never told anyone? You wouldn't use the full list in casual chat, but the principle holds. Build trust gradually, start light, and use your judgment about when it's appropriate to go deeper. Move back to trivial subjects if you sense any discomfort. Another useful technique for encouraging disclosure is parroting. Simply repeat the last 2 or 3 words the person said, turning it into a question. If they say, I spent all weekend working with photographers, you just say, photographers. It's unobtrusive and prompts them to elaborate naturally. And always listen for clues in their answers. Notice recurring topics or themes. These often reveal their passions, interests, or concerns. If someone keeps mentioning their dog, ask more about the dog.
Tailoring questions to what they reveal.
Yes. Then there are factual questions, where you're seeking information. Here, clarity of objective is key. Know exactly what you want to find out before you ask. Make sure you're asking the right person, someone who actually has the knowledge and can express it clearly. Do your background research first. Don't waste their time asking questions you could have easily Googled. Show you've made an effort. I've looked through the project files, but I'm still unclear on X. When formulating factual questions, ask one question at a time. If it's complex, state that up front. Don't ask leading questions that suggest the answer you want. Example, ask, how is the project going? Not, you're facing problems with the project budget, aren't you?
Keeping it neutral and focused.
Exactly. Now, perhaps most powerfully, you can use questions to change someone's mind or help them see a different perspective.
More effective than just arguing.
Often far more effective. People are much more receptive to ideas they feel they've arrived at themselves rather than ones forced upon them. Think like a therapist. Ask open-ended questions that gently challenge their assumptions.
Like what?
Start by understanding their belief. What leads you to think that? Or, can you tell me more about why you feel that way? Then explore the basis of the belief. How did you arrive at that conclusion? Or, what evidence supports that view? Maybe even, is there any evidence that might cause you to reconsider? Listen carefully to their reasoning. Then you can present your perspective, perhaps framed as another possibility they might consider.
Guiding them through questions.
Precisely. And a quick tip on asking for a favor. Phrasing matters. Research suggests asking, can you help me with X, is often more successful than, will you help me with X? Because can you appeals to their sense of capability and competence, making them more likely to agree.
That's fascinating. Such subtle framing makes a difference. Okay, shifting to another difficult scenario. How do you make a complaint effectively but with grace, without coming across as aggressive or unreasonable?
Making a complaint gracefully is definitely an art form. First, if possible, practice what you're going to say aloud beforehand. This helps you deliver it calmly and clearly, even if you're feeling annoyed. Second, read up on your rights related to the issue. Know what you're realistically entitled to: a refund, a repair, an apology. Third, and this is crucial, complain about the product or service, not the person you're talking to, unless their behavior is the issue. Avoid insults or blaming language. Focus on the problem objectively. This product is broken, not, you sold me this stupid broken thing. Fourth, don't be afraid to escalate politely if the first person can't help. Ask to speak to a manager. Fifth, use objective language as much as possible. Sixth, use closed questions if you need a quick resolution. Are you going to process a refund now? And seventh, if you encounter a particularly stubborn employee, the broken record technique can be useful. Calmly and politely repeat your request or statement of fact without getting drawn into arguments. Finally, especially with senior managers, remind them about their company's reputation if necessary. Leveraging potential social media feedback can be a last resort, but sometimes effective. Combining strategies often works best.
Okay, that's a solid plan for complaining constructively. Now, what are those moments when things get really heated? How do you handle arguments or heated discussions without them spiraling out of control?
Heated discussions are tough, but manageable. First, stop fearing anger itself. Anger is a normal human emotion, often signaling that a boundary has been crossed or a need isn't being met. Focus on resolving the issue that caused the anger, not just shutting down the emotion. Second, state your goal for the discussion clearly, at least to yourself. What positive outcome are you aiming for? Avoid just trying to win the argument or prove the other person wrong. Aim for mutual understanding or a workable solution. Third, absolutely no personal insults. Attack the problem, not the person. Fourth, maintain your usual volume. Yelling doesn't win respect or arguments, it just escalates tension. Fifth, avoid stockpiling grievances, bringing up unrelated past issues. Focus on the present problem. Ignore attempts by the other person to divert the conversation. Sixth, no ultimatums unless you are absolutely prepared to follow through, as threats often backfire. And crucially, seventh, do not tolerate verbal abuse. If the conversation descends into insults or yelling, state clearly that you won't continue under those conditions and remove yourself from the situation. You have the right to be treated respectfully.
Setting firm boundaries. What about handling insults specifically, if someone directs one at you?
Handling an insult calmly can actually be an opportunity to impress onlookers with your composure. First, decide whether to even call it out. Ignore minor micro-insults or unintentional slights, but react to direct, aggressive ones. Tactics include asking a calm, clarifying question, "Why would you say that?" or "What makes you think that?" or stating your feelings and the consequence. "I don't appreciate being spoken to like that, and if it continues, I will end this conversation." You could also choose to address it privately later. The key is don't return the insult. Don't sink to their level. Using humor requires extreme care and is usually best avoided. And remember, insults almost always reflect more on the perpetrator's character than on you. Don't take it personally if you can help it.
Good advice. What about when you are the one who needs to apologize? How do you do it effectively and sincerely?
A good apology requires a few key elements. First, show you understand their feelings, ideally using their own words if possible. "I understand you felt hurt, disrespected, ignored when I..." This shows you've actually listened. Second, give an explanation, not an excuse, if appropriate. "I was really overwhelmed with the deadline, but that's no excuse. I still should have texted you back." Take responsibility. Third, don't demand forgiveness or acceptance. Offer the apology sincerely, and then listen if they need to clarify further how your actions affected them. Finally, once you've apologized, try to move on, even if they don't immediately accept it. Let them process it in their own time.
Understanding, responsibility, no demands. Makes sense. Lastly, in this section, how do you actually persuade someone of your opinion effectively, beyond just using logic?
Persuasion. It's often about more than just logic. You need to tap into emotions and utilize known psychological factors of influence. Robert Cialdini's work identified several key factors. Authority. Emphasize your relevant qualifications, experience, or, quote, respected experts to support your point. Likability. Build rapport first. Be empathetic. Find common ground. Offer genuine, not manipulative compliments. People are more persuaded by those they like. Reciprocity. The principle of doing favors first. Offering help or a small concession can create a subtle sense of obligation, making them more receptive to your request later. Consensus social proof. Highlighting that many other people are doing this, or most experts believe this, can be very persuasive. We're influenced by what others do.
So, leveraging these psychological principles, how do you structure the argument itself?
A good structure helps, maybe. 1. State why the issue is important. 2. Clearly summarize your stance or proposal. 3. Briefly establish your credibility or expertise on the topic. 4. Use specific, relevant statistics or data if applicable. 5. Draw on compelling case studies or stories. Narratives engage emotions much better than dry facts. 6. Acknowledge and address potential counterarguments proactively. This shows you've considered other views and strengthens your position. And always try to tap into their principles or values. Tailor your argument to what matters to them. If you're persuading a manager focused on fairness, frame your proposal around equality or team benefit.
And body language during persuasion.
Eye contact is an important name for assertive and engaged, not dominant or staring. Interestingly, subtly mirroring the other person's body language, their posture, gestures, is often more effective for building rapport and persuasion than trying to project power through aggressive body language.
Wow, that was a deep dive into navigating the really difficult conversations. It's clear that effective communication isn't a one-size-fits-all skill, is it? Different contexts seem to demand different approaches and sensitivities.
Exactly. The core principles remain, but the application needs tailoring. Let's provide some specific advice for a few common, sometimes challenging situations. First up, conversations on the phone.
Ah, the phone call. Fewer cues to rely on.
Precisely. The main challenges are less perceived intimacy and the complete lack of visual cues like facial expressions and body language. So you need to compensate. First, always get availability right at the start. Ask politely, is now a good time to talk for about state duration minutes? Respect their time. Second, compensate with words for the missing visuals. Use explicit verbal cues for things you might normally just nod at. Say, I see, or okay, that makes sense. Use verbal exclamations like, wow, that's surprising. Use their name occasionally to maintain connection. Third, be mindful of background noise on either end. Acknowledge interruptions, sounds like you've got company, and offer to reschedule if it's clearly not a good time for them to focus. Fourth, try to cut the ramble. Get to the point reasonably quickly. It's easier for people's minds to wander when they're just listening on the phone without visual engagement. Fifth, try not to be the negative caller, the person whose calls people dread because they always involve complaints or problems. Try to end calls on a high note if possible. Sixth, use cliffhanger voicemails if you need a call back. Be specific enough to pique their interest. Hi, it's your name. Call in with the figures you asked for. Give me a call back when you can. Seventh, for important calls where details matter, consider recording. Always check legality first for better information retention, or at the very least, send a brief follow-up email summary afterward. This creates a paper trail and confirms mutual understanding.
That's really practical advice for making phone calls more effective. What about conversations with non-native speakers or even people with hearing impairments? That's increasingly common.
Very common and requires extra care and patience. Remember, around 48 million Americans alone have significant hearing loss, so these skills are broadly applicable. First and foremost, use proper standard English. Clear grammar, clear pronunciation, no slurring words together. Avoid complex sentence structures, regional slang, or niche colloquialisms they're unlikely to know. Use short, simple words where possible. Also, consciously try to avoid filler words like totally, as these just add noise and make it harder to follow the core message. Give direct answers like yes or no rather than vague affirmations like uh-huh or mm-mm, which can be easily missed or misunderstood. Use long forms over contractions where clarity is paramount. Say should not instead of shouldn't, cannot instead of can't. And always be aware of the broader context. Cultural differences, age, gender norms can all create potential barriers to understanding beyond just language fluency.
What are some other specific tips for clarity?
Okay, some more tips. If they don't understand, repeat your point first, then try rephrasing it using different words. Give them a fair chance to respond. Formulating a response in a non-native language takes extra processing time. Don't rush them. To check your understanding, ask them to rephrase what you said. Just to make sure I was clear, can you tell me briefly what you think I was asking for? Don't correct their grammar or pronunciation unless they specifically ask you to. Minimize words with multiple meanings if possible, e.g. specify last Monday, the 15th, not just last Monday. Ask direct questions without long preambles. Use the active tense, we completed the report, rather than the passive tense, the report was completed, as it's usually easier to follow. Keep paper and pen handy for quick diagrams or writing down keywords if needed. Use gestures and facial expressions more consciously to support your words. If it's a formal meeting, provide an agenda in advance. And crucially, if you don't understand them, use I language. I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that last part. Could you say it again? Never judge their intelligence by their language fluency. Treat them with the same respect you'd offer any native speaker.
That's incredibly helpful and empathetic advice. Now, what about those potentially intimidating conversations with authority figures, bosses, senior colleagues, doctors, officials? Disagreeing or raising concerns can feel risky.
They often feel like the hardest conversations, especially if you need to express views that might go against theirs. First, try to assume openness. Most people in positions of authority actually take pride in their interpersonal skills and genuinely want feedback, even if it's critical. Don't go in assuming they'll be defensive. Disagree politely when your honest feedback is requested. Avoid just being a yes boss person. Offer constructive criticism when appropriate. The praise sandwich technique can be useful here. Frame negative feedback between two positive comments. Ask respectful questions that acknowledge their expertise or position. Could you help me understand the reasoning behind? Maintain assertive, confident body language. Stand tall. Make eye contact. Remind yourself they're just human beings too. Brace yourself for potential criticism in return. If they offer feedback, listen openly, don't take it personally, thank them for it, and avoid getting defensive in the moment. You can reflect on it later. However, stand up for yourself respectfully when necessary. Don't take the blame for something that wasn't your fault. Watch out for rhetorical questions they might ask. These aren't usually genuine invitations for you to speak. If you're particularly nervous about a formal meeting, like with HR or a doctor, consider taking an advocate or support person with you. And if anxiety about these conversations is genuinely crippling your career or well-being, seek professional help like therapy or coaching.
Good practical tips for managing those power dynamics. Lastly, let's touch on a specific context where communication skills are make or break: excelling in job interviews.
Ah, the interview. Yes, strong interpersonal skills are often the deciding factor between two equally qualified candidates. Research shows they frequently lead to the hire.
So what are the aims in an interview conversation?
You have three main aims. 1, help the interviewer assess if you're a good fit for the organization's culture. 2, clearly demonstrate your qualifications and positive qualities. 3, build rapport and leave a positive impression.
What are some specific communication tips for interviews?
Okay, some key tips. Don't consciously slow down your speech too much. Research suggests this can paradoxically make you appear more anxious, not calmer. Speak at a natural, energetic pace. Watch your intonation, especially avoiding that upward inflection at the end of statements that makes you sound uncertain, like you're asking a question. Speak with conviction. Similarly, don't qualify your statements unnecessarily with words like hopefully, maybe, sort of, or I think. State your accomplishments and capabilities confidently. Marry confidence with enthusiasm. Clearly list your capabilities and achievements, but also convey genuine enthusiasm for the role and the organization. Explain why those skills inspire you or how you envision applying them there. Try to adhere roughly to the 60-second rule for answering questions. Be concise and structured, don't ramble. Use we language alongside I language to show you're a team player, but also take individual responsibility. In our last team project, we achieved X, and I was specifically responsible for Y and Z. Prepare thoroughly for common questions. Tell me about yourself, your elevator pitch. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Frame a minor correctable weakness and what you're doing about it. What can you bring to this role organization? Focus on skills plus benefit to them. For phone interviews, consciously inject more energy and enthusiasm into your voice as they can't see you. Having notes nearby is fine as a security blanket, but don't sound like you're reading from a script. Dress for success. Even for video interviews, it impacts your own confidence. And address interviewers by their title and surname, AG, Dr. Smith, Mrs. Jones, until or unless you're explicitly invited to use their first name.
Great tips. But skills alone aren't enough, right?
Absolutely not. Excellent social skills need to be combined with the actual qualifications and experience required for the job, but they can definitely give you the edge. And if you don't get the job, always try to politely ask for feedback. It shows you're committed to personal development and leaves a positive final impression. #tag outro.
Well, we have covered an incredible amount of ground today, haven't we? From the foundational importance of listening and mastering your own voice, all the way through to navigating conflict, building empathy, repairing relationships, and handling specific tricky contexts. It really feels like a comprehensive toolkit for conversation mastery.
It really does cover a lot.
And we hope all of you listening feel both equipped and inspired now, because as we've discussed, developing these skills can have such a profound positive impact on practically every area of your life, your career trajectory, your social connections, your family life, and ultimately your personal sense of well-being and confidence.
And it's interesting, beyond those direct benefits we focused on, there are even some unexpected cognitive upsides. Did you know, for instance, that some research suggests simply engaging in regular small talk in the workplace can actually boost your executive functions, things like problem solving and planning skills?
Wow, I didn't know that. Even small talk has benefits.
It seems so. And more broadly, by consciously strengthening your social networks through better conversation, you inherently build resilience. You reduce stress in so many different life situations, whether it's making that complaint effectively, adapting smoothly to a new environment, or even just navigating those sometimes stressful, big family gatherings with more grace.
So the ripple effects are huge.
They really are. So we really encourage you to take the initiative based on what we've discussed. If you're a manager listening, maybe consider if your team's conversation skills could use a boost. Could some training help? Could you foster more collaborative tasks that require effective dialogue? If you're an individual employee, perhaps ask your organization about communication training opportunities. And if you're a parent, think about how you model good communication for your children. Provide them with varied social opportunities, and importantly, show them how you resolve conflicts constructively.
Leading by example.
Exactly. And here's a final, perhaps provocative thought to leave you with. Consider that this seemingly simple act, the act of improving how you talk and how you listen, could genuinely be one of the single most powerful investments you ever make in your future well-being, your happiness, and your success. What hidden opportunities, what deeper connections, what untapped potential might be waiting for you to unlock just by developing a clearer voice and a more empathetic ear?
A powerful question indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art and science of conversation. We sincerely hope you feel inspired and equipped to start putting these insights into practice in your own life, starting today. If you found value in this deep dive, please take just a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support really helps us bring more valuable insights like this directly to you. Until next time, keep diving deep.